Have you ever imagined yourself walking in the mall or down the street and coming face to face with a cartoon character right in front of you? It may sound crazy, but it's true, because many, yes many, cartoon characters are based on real people. Take Ariel, the Little Mermaid, for example, who was inspired by the actress ALYSSA Milano, known for her role in the sitcom Who's the Boss? That aired on TV in the 80s and 90s and was quite successful. The facial features of Princess Ariel closely resemble those of the young actress who gained significant fame in the United States during that time. This is just one of 12 cases where cartoon characters are inspired by real people, and you had no idea about it. Mr. Burns, The Simpsons. Well, folks, even someone as sinister and villainous as Mr. Burns is also one of the cartoon characters inspired by a real human being. Believe it or not, the malevolent owner of the Springfield nuclear power plant was actually inspired by a member of the world's most powerful family, Baron Jacob Rothschild. The Rothschild family is the wealthiest family in the world, owning a banking network and lending money to major countries and nations for over 300 years. So not only was the image of Baron Rothschild used to inspire the cruelest character in The Simpsons, but also his almost limitless fortune. Edna Mode. Anyone who watched The Incredibles surely remembers Edna Mode, the short and strong-willed fashion designer for superheroes. Interestingly, the character's design, got the pun, was entirely inspired by Edith Head, a real-life costume designer and stylist who won a whopping 8 Oscars. The inspiration was more of a tribute to the woman who made history in American cinema, contributing to the success of many films. Oh, and one detail, Edna Mode is indeed short because Edith herself was just over 5 feet tall. The intention was to make the character resemble her inspiration. Shrek. Seriously, anyone who watched Shrek and didn't like it was either really down or had just gone through a major breakup because, without a doubt, it's one of the most animated and entertaining franchises of all time. Seeing the ogre and his gang mix up all the fairy tales and make fun of everyone is so cool. And despite being a character based on a terrifying folklore creature, the ogre, the truth is that the big green monster was inspired by a real human when it came to the design. The person who served as a model for Shrek was a man named MAURICE TILLET. MAURICE was a famous wrestler in the 1930s and 1940s. In other words, if you had a time machine and traveled back to that era, you would see Shrek himself stepping into the ring and knocking out opponents. It would be like watching Shrek movies almost live. The big guy's fighting nickname was the French Angel, but he was actually Russian and lived and died in the United States. Quite a mix, huh? The wrestler's appearance was due to a condition called acromegaly. He had a lot of success in the world of wrestling, always attracting a large audience, mainly because everyone wanted to see the giant man with distinct features simply demolishing his opponents in true Shrek style. Ursula. Now let's talk about the villain from the Princess of the Deep Sea movie. Ursula is undoubtedly one of the most sinister villains in the entire Disney universe, and one of the reasons for that is the unique design of the Sea Witch, which is different from all the others. What few people know is that the character was inspired by a real person, the drag queen Divine, who recorded several successful songs in the 1980s and 90s in the United States, and had a unique image that was partially transferred to Ursula, and it worked out perfectly. Popeye. The cartoon of the sailor Popeye was much more famous in the past than it is today, but almost everyone knows who he is, especially when it comes to the pipe and his beloved girlfriend, Olive Oyl. And no one forgets that Popeye's secret to strength lies in his cans of spinach. But what almost no one knows is that Popeye actually existed in real life. The real sailor's name was Frank Rocky FIEGEL, known simply as Rocky. He was known for always getting into fights and for his inseparable pipe, just like the cartoon character, but he loved telling stories of his adventures to children. Just by looking at Rocky's image, you can tell that Popeye is a faithful copy of the guy. In fact, Popeye's creator, L.Z. Seeger, met Rocky when he was a child and always heard his stories and feats at sea and how strong and fearless he was. From there, the inspiration for Olive Oyl's eternal boyfriend and Brutus's rival was born. Mulan. One of the things that made Disney cartoons so special in the past was the dedication with which the projects were made to be realistic, so that girls could truly identify with the characters and princesses. And one of those extremely realistic characters is another Disney princess, Mulan, the warrior who saved China. To create the character, the animators were inspired by actress Ming-Na Wen, who not only served as the muse for the heroine, but also provided her voice. And you can really notice that the actress and Mulan share many traits. Johnny Cage. Anyone who has played or watched Mortal Kombat knows who Johnny Cage is. one of the main characters in the world's most famous fighting game franchise. But what few people know is that the character was created to be an exact copy of one of the most famous action movie stars of the 90s, precisely when the first Mortal Kombat game was released. And that actor is none other than Jean-Claude Van Damme, a superstar of some of the most famous action movies of all time. I must say that the character and the actor do look alike. Pocahontas. Another Disney character who is part of the Disney princesses is Pocahontas. The Native American character had her first movie released in 1995 and the second one in 1998. Although the legend of Pocahontas is inspired by a true story of an Indian woman who lived in the 1600s, the animated character's design was based on another person, who was also a Native American. The inspiration came from actress IRENE BEDARD, who not only served as the basis for the character, but also provided the original voice for Pocahontas in both films. And we have to say, the resemblance is truly incredible. Mowgli, the Jungle Book. Most people may not realize it, but the story of Mowgli, the Indian boy raised by wolves, began long before the two most recent films released in 2016 and 2018. The first animated movie of Mowgli was released by Disney in 1967, and it had a sequel in 2003, along with a 3D animated series made in 2010. But what's even cooler is that the cartoon was inspired by a book, which in turn was inspired by the real case of an Indian boy who was actually raised and lived with wolves. The case happened in 1872, and after being rescued, the boy was named Sanichar, which simply meant Saturday, as nobody knew his origin. The boy walked on all fours and ate and drank like a wolf. In other words, there was a real-life Mowgli who inspired all the cartoons and movies we see today. Belle, Beauty and the Beast. We're too young to remember, but our grandparents were once young, beautiful, and attractive, and some still are to this day. Kisses to Grandma! And some of the actresses who were absolute beauty icons in the past, during our grandparents' and great-grandparents' time, are not as well known anymore. That's the case with Elizabeth Taylor, an actress who achieved tremendous success in the 1950s and 1960s. For that very reason, the Disney animators of the past used her as a reference for the realistic features and details of the character Belle from the movie Beauty and the Beast, released in 1991. And I have to say, there is indeed a resemblance between the character and the actress, which turned out really great. Elizabeth truly deserved the title of the most beautiful woman of her time, and our great-grandparents and grandparents would certainly agree. Rick! This is an extremely interesting case that involves not only a very famous person from Hollywood, but also one of the most iconic characters in the history of science fiction films. Rick Sanchez is simply the smartest being in the Rick and Morty universe, and he does whatever he wants and desires without much restraint or fear of the consequences. So when you see him, you immediately associate with him the image of a somewhat crazy and brilliant scientist, and he truly embodies both aspects. The cool thing is that he was inspired by Dr. Emmett Brown, one of the two main characters in the Back to the Future film series. Dr. Brown was portrayed by actor Christopher Lloyd in all three films of the trilogy, and became a symbol of a scientist who is part mad, part genius, just like Rick. There was even a live-action teaser of the show, and of course, they paid tribute to Dr. Brown, played by Christopher Lloyd, by having him portray Rick, and it turned out really great. These are the 12 characters that were inspired by real people, and most people had no idea. Which of these characters did you already know were inspired by someone? And which ones were a surprise to you? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated with our upcoming videos. Until next time, bye-bye!